You are crouching in the dirt. Your knees are pressed into cold ground. Every muscle in your body is locked around a single wave of pain that feels like it will split you in two. There is no hospital, no epidural, no doctor standing by with a scalpel. There is only the dark, the earth, and the women around you who have done this before. For roughly 300,000 years, this is what bringing a human being into the world looked like. And for most of that time, it nearly killed you. The reason it was so dangerous comes down to a collision between two of the most important things that made you human. Two evolutionary trends that your species pushed to the absolute limit, and they happen to be on a direct collision course inside your own body. The first was walking upright. About 4 to 5 million years ago, your earliest ancestors began standing on two legs. That was the beginning of everything. Bipedalism freed your hands, which eventually allowed you to carry food, make tools, and build shelters. But it came with a cost. To walk upright, the pelvis had to reshape itself. It had to become narrower, more bowl-like, more compact. The birth canal shrank. The second was brain size. Over the next few million years, the human brain tripled in volume. A newborn's skull was no longer small and round like a chimpanzee's. It was large, it was rigid, and it had to pass through that reshaped, narrowed pelvis. Paleoanthropologist Karen Rosenberg at the University of Delaware has studied this problem for decades. She describes human birth as uniquely difficult among all primates. A chimpanzee mother gives birth alone. She barely pauses from whatever she was doing. The baby's head passes through a wide, open pelvis with room to spare. For a human mother, there is almost no room at all. This collision between a shrinking pelvis and an expanding skull has a name. Scientists call it the obstetric dilemma. The word obstetric just means related to childbirth. So the obstetric dilemma is the childbirth problem, and it has been killing mothers since before your species was fully human. Skeletal evidence confirms how severe this was. At a site called Cima de los Huesos, which means pit of bones, in northern Spain, researchers have recovered thousands of fossil fragments dating back roughly 430,000 years. Among them are the remains of women whose pelvic bones tell a story of extreme difficulty. The birth canal was barely wide enough, and the babies' skulls were already approaching the size of a modern newborn. Imagine that for a moment. 400,000 years ago, a woman is in labor. The baby's head is pressing against bone. There are no instruments, no antiseptics, no way to perform a cesarean section. If the baby is turned the wrong way, or if the head is too large, or if the pelvis is slightly too narrow, the outcome is catastrophic. For the mother, for the child, for both. So how did your species survive this? How did humans manage to reproduce at all, given that every single birth was a potential death sentence? The answer is something evolutionary anthropologist Wenda Trevathan at New Mexico State University has spent her career explaining. She calls it the social birth. Unlike almost every other primate on Earth, human mothers did not give birth alone. They could not afford to. The danger was too high, the pain too overwhelming, the complications too likely. So human birth evolved to require help. Trevathan's research shows that as labor begins, a cascade of social behaviors kicks in. The mother seeks out other women. She finds a familiar, safe location. She assumes a specific posture, almost always squatting or kneeling, which uses gravity to help open the pelvis. And other women surround her. They guide her. They catch the baby. They clear the airway. They cut the cord with a sharp stone. This was not a cultural invention. This was biological evolution. Your body was designed to give birth in the presence of others. The hormonal system that controls labor responds to the feeling of safety. If a mother feels threatened or alone, labor can actually stall. The body will hold the baby in. It will wait. Because in the wild, giving birth alone meant being completely vulnerable to predators. So your ancestors built a system. When a woman went into labor, the tribe responded. Other women gathered. The men stood guard. And birth became the first true medical procedure your species ever performed. But even with help, the danger was enormous. A study published in 2019 by researchers at the University of Zurich analyzed the pelvic dimensions of women across different populations throughout human evolutionary history. Their findings confirmed that the trade-off between bipedalism and brain size was never fully resolved. The pelvis widened just barely enough. The baby's head compressed just barely enough. The margins were razor thin. Maternal mortality in prehistoric populations is difficult to measure directly from bones alone. But researchers who study modern hunter-gatherer groups, the closest living models for Paleolithic life, have found maternal death rates that are staggering by modern standards. Among the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the oldest continuous populations of hunter-gatherers on Earth, studies led by researchers like Frank Marlowe have documented that childbirth remained a leading cause of death for women well into the 20th century, even without modern complications like infection from unsterile instruments. Now picture a specific scene. It is 60,000 years ago. A small band of humans is camped along a river in what is now southern Africa. The shelters are lean-tos made of branches and animal hides. A fire burns low in the center of camp. The woman who is about to give birth has been in pain since dawn. Her mother is beside her. An older woman from the group, someone who has helped deliver 7 or 8 babies before and seen 2 mothers die in the process, is kneeling in front of her. The labor has been going on for hours. The baby is large. The head is pressing hard. The older woman can feel the shape of the skull through the skin, and she is guiding the rotation, turning the baby millimeter by millimeter so that the smallest possible diameter passes through the narrowest point of the pelvis. This is not something she learned from a textbook. This is knowledge passed from woman to woman across hundreds of generations. It is encoded in practice, in memory, in the muscle memory of hands that have done this before. Trevathan argues that this knowledge was so critical to survival that it shaped the entire social structure of early human groups. Birth helpers were not optional. They were essential. And here is the part that surprises most people. In some ways, Paleolithic mothers had advantages that modern mothers do not. They squatted. They did not lie on their backs. Squatting opens the pelvic outlet by as much as 30% compared to lying flat. Gravity does part of the work. The baby descends with the help of physics rather than against it. They were physically active their entire lives. Their bodies were strong, flexible, and conditioned by years of walking, climbing, lifting, and carrying. The musculature around the pelvis was robust. They ate a diverse, wild diet rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which support fetal brain development, and they did not consume processed foods that contribute to gestational diabetes and oversized babies. And critically, they were never alone. The presence of experienced women reduced panic, reduced the stress hormones that can slow labor, and provided immediate assistance when something went wrong. But none of that erased the fundamental problem. The obstetric dilemma was brutal. Bones from the archaeological record show healed fractures in the pelvis. They show signs of chronic pelvic damage. They show women who survived births that left them permanently injured. And the babies suffered too. Newborn skulls are made of separate bone plates that can overlap slightly during birth, a feature called molding, which allows the head to compress as it passes through the canal. This is your body's built-in engineering to deal with the fact that your skull is almost too big to fit. Sometimes it was not enough. The fossil record preserves tiny bones of babies who did not make it through. So what changed? How did we go from squatting in the dirt surrounded by firelight to the modern hospital room? The shift was gradual. For tens of thousands of years, the basic pattern remained the same. Women gave birth in a supported, upright position, surrounded by experienced helpers, using techniques refined over generations. In ancient Egypt, there are records of birth stools, curved seats designed to support a squatting position. In ancient Greece and Rome, midwives were respected professionals. The upright birth was the default for most of human history. It was not until the 17th and 18th centuries in Europe that lying on your back during birth became common. And that change was driven not by medical evidence but by the convenience of male physicians, who found it easier to observe and intervene when the mother was horizontal. The shift away from squatting, away from midwives, away from the communal birth, happened in a few centuries. Your body, however, evolved over millions of years. It did not get the memo. Modern obstetric medicine has saved millions of lives. The cesarean section alone has transformed what would have been a death sentence into a routine procedure. Antibiotics prevent the infections that killed countless mothers. Fetal monitoring catches problems before they become fatal. This is not a story about how the old way was better. It was not. Mothers died constantly. Babies died constantly. The old way was terrifying. But it is a story about what your body expects, about the evolutionary context in which your reproductive system was shaped. Your pelvis is still a compromise between walking upright and passing a large-brained baby through it. Your labor hormones still respond to feelings of safety and social support. Your body still carries the architecture of a species that gave birth in the dirt, surrounded by other women squatting over the earth. The obstetric dilemma was never fully solved. It was survived, generation after generation, by women who were stronger and braver and more resilient than anything you or I have ever had to be. You were born because thousands of women before you fought through pain that would bring you to your knees, in conditions you cannot imagine, and they won. Not every time, but enough times. Enough times for you to be here reading this in a world they could never have pictured. And somewhere deep inside your body, in the shape of your pelvis and the plates of your skull and the hormones that flood you when you feel safe among people you trust, their story is still written. You are the survival, you are the proof that it worked.